Good afternoon to all. Now, this afternoon session will be delivered by Mr. G. Chaitanya. So G. Chaitanya is our own research scholar working at VNIT Nagpur. He pursued his MTech in machine design from JNTU Kakinada, and he has experience as an research associate for 3 years in mechanical engineering department, JNTU Kakinada, wherein he worked in the field of ceramics. Later, since last 3 to 4 years, he is associated with Dr. TVK Gupta and working in the field of additive manufacturing in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. Since last 2 years, he got 5 to 6 essay journal papers and 4 international conferences in reputed journals. So I would like to request G. Chaitanya to start his session.
Good afternoon, sir. Rahul, sir, good afternoon. Am I audible?
Good afternoon, Chaitanya. Yeah, it is audible.
Yeah, thank you for the kind introduction about me. Thank you very much. And shall I start my presentation?
Yes, you can start.
Yes, sir.
Please.
Yeah. Few minutes, sir. It is loading.
Yeah, take your time. Well, participants are requested to hold on for 2 minutes. As and when speaker will be ready with arrangements, all the arrangements, we will start. Just 2 minutes we will give to speaker so that he can arrange the presentation. Yes.
Sir, I hope my presentation is visible.
Yeah, right now it is visible.
Yes, sir. Yes, we'll start with our presentation. Good evening, everyone. This is, am I audible? I hope so.
Yes, it is
Yes,
audible.
okay. I'll carry on. Thank you, Raul, sir. Thank you for the introduction. I'll start with my work. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Myself, I'm Chaitanya Gullipalli, research scholar in the Department of Mechanical Engineering, Visvesvaraya National Institute of Technology, Nagpur. I am working with Dr. TVK Gupta in the area of additive manufacturing from past 3 years. And today I want to present a portion of our research as a group we did, effect of process parameters on the geometry and microstructure of AM components. Before starting, we will have a small introduction and a small history of additive manufacturing. Let us see, we'll start with the basic manufacturing. If you see, manufacturing is of two, on a rough basis, you can say two methods. One is additive, other one is subtractive. In the subtractive,
Chaitanya,
it is, yes,
sorry.
yes,
Actually, your screen is not visible. It is still loading. I hope.
loading.
It is still
Uh,
loading. So you just wait for 2 minutes so that it
okay.
will appear. Okay.
It is visible here actually. I
Sir,
think.
it is visible to all the participants.
Yes, yes.
Okay. It is visible. Okay.
Okay.
Here it is. Okay. Then you can
Okay.
continue.
Yes. Participants, please raise an issue if such audio or video problem, if there is in between, you can interrupt me. No problem in that. Okay. And a standard definition, if we see according to the ASTM, this additive manufacturing is process of joining materials to make objects from 3D model data. Usually, it's a layer upon layer method, as opposite to the subtractive manufacturing methodology, such as machining and all other traditional. In machining, what we do, we will build a block or we will cast a block. From that, whatever shape we want, we will drill a hole or we will cut the shape we require. But in the opposite to that, in additive manufacturing, we will deposit layer by layer, and whatever shape we require, we will deposit layer after layer. That is additive manufacturing. And here we will see a small history of additive manufacturing. Even though the term additive manufacturing was not famous and earlier, but the concept was very old. The very first concept patented was laminated shoe horse in 1902. It is somewhat 100 years old in Pennsylvania. But at the time, the term additive manufacturing was not there. They have concept-wise, they have patented it. After 50 years, scientist named Kojima, he has demonstrated the advantages of the layered manufacturing. And in the history, if we see 1987, we can see it's a first milestone for additive manufacturing technologies, where the very first system was commercialized, that is stereolithography operators from the 3D systems. And the scientist name is Charles Hull. Afterwards, up to from 1987 to up to this day, many researchers has done various research tasks they have done, and they have contributed a lot to the field, and they have come up with various technologies and various ideas and various optimized processes in the additive manufacturing field. And roughly, if we see whatever may be the additive manufacturing process we take, the general flowchart follows like this. At the starting, we will take a CAD model of the shape whatever we want to build. In that CAD model, we will convert that into STL or AMF file, and that file we will slice it into number of layers. Each layer contains some data. After building each layer, we will see whether the part is finished or not. If it is no, go and deposit the second layer. If it is yes, the part is finished, and remove the part. Once the complete part is finished, we will remove the part and we will do the whatever post-processing required on the part, we will do the post-processing. Like that, in the additive manufacturing, it can work with a wide range of materials, like liquid-based materials, it can work, powder-based material, it can work, and solid-based material also, it can work. And if you see the classification, it is somewhat clumsy and huge, it seems. Liquid base have 3 varieties, and powder base has some 7, 8 varieties, and solid base has some 2 varieties of fused deposition modeling, sheet stacking, and all these technologies. To avoid this confusion, or else to clear this mess, ASTM has come up with a standards in 2009, and they have classified this additive manufacturing technologies into 7 categories. Whatever technology we use right now, or whatever material we use right now, that comes under these any one out of these 7 technologies. That is material jetting, wet photopolymerization, binder jetting, powder bed fusion, sheet lamination, material extrusion, and direct energy deposition. As we are more interested in that direct energy deposition, why? Because our topic is present this topic is metal additive manufacturing. With the metals, there are 2 predominant technologies here that can work: powder bed fusion and direct energy deposition. Fused deposition modeling and sheet lamination can work, but these two are predominant and efficient. Right now we are more concentrating on the direct energy deposition technology, and we will see how this is, what are the advantages of this direct energy deposition, what are the applications of this direct energy deposition, and in the direct energy deposition what kind of technologies we are using. And further in depth we will dig into the direct energy deposition in the today's topic. First of all, if we see the advantages of this direct energy deposition: design complexity and freedom. And with this direct energy deposition, since it is a layer by layer manufacturing, complex shapes also we can produce. Speed. If you consider the speed, if you want to build a component, first you have to cast a block in traditional manufacturing. From that casted block, you have to do the finishing operation. From that, you have to cut the shape, whatever you want. But here it is a direct, from the scratch, you can build the component directly. No need of casting, cooling, and cutting. All the extra machining operations you can avoid. Customization. If you see the customization, if you feel that in the halfway the component that is you are building, it is going in the wrong direction, immediately you can change the program, and you can correct the program, and you can come into the right path again. Toolless, no need of dies for drawing and everything, no need of molds for the casting and all. It's a toolless, and no storage cost. And as whenever you require, you can build the component and give it to the operation, final operation. That is the advantage. And if we see more technical terms, minimum distortion and small heat affected zone. Since this direct energy deposition uses either laser or electron beam as a heat source, the spot diameter for that electron beam or the laser is 5 mm, or whatever we are using the laser beam right now is 5.5 mm. Whatever energy, 2 kilowatt or 4 kilowatt, whatever energy we are giving, that will be concentrated onto the only 5 mm spot diameter. That means that heat won't scatters everywhere. Whatever energy we are giving, that concentrates on the small portion only, and the work gets done. Because of that, not much distortion we will get, as well as small heat effector zone, because whatever energy we are supplying to that small dot or 5.5 mm diameter only, that's why that heat does not transfer much to the other areas, and very less heat effector zone we get. Good bond strength. If we see in the direct energy deposition process, it melts a small portion on the substrate, and that is melt pool, and whatever powder we are supplying, that is also melts. So the substrate and the powder, the external material you are supplying, both are reaching the melting state. So those will melt properly, and the bonding will be strong, and the bonding is metallurgical bonding, not mechanical bonding like the other surface coatings like a thermal sprays or cold sprays like that. This is a metallurgical bond, because the both materials are reaching the melting point and completely melting and then solidifying. Minimum post processing is required. Why? Because when with the spot diameter is less and less, the fineness of the finished component is good. Actually, very small spot diameters mean very small depositions will give fine surfaces. And can 10th one is can deposit the difficult to cut materials. For an example, if we take nickel material, nickel alloy, any nickel alloy, so it is very hard to cut. Why? Because while machining of nickel alloys, huge amount of heat is generated. Because of the heat, the tools, whatever cutting tools that will lose their performance. Those cannot perform very good at high temperature. It is very difficult to cut the nickel alloys. In such cases, no need of cutting, machining, and all things. Directly, we can deposit the shape whatever we want with the direct energy deposition. And repair applications, we can use direct energy deposition. And functionally graded coatings also we can deposit. On a soft material, we can deposit a hard coating for the wear applications like that. On a wear resistant coating, in between we can add a medium hard coating to reduce the hardness differences. Like that we can use. These are the advantages of the direct energy deposition. And if we see the application part, it has many applications in aerospace industry, marine industry, wear resistant coatings, tooling industry, automotive industry, and biomedical implants. Nowadays, much of work is going on in the biomedical field, directly depositing the biomedical implants. As and whenever required the shape of the bioimplant, we are depositing with the DED component. And if we see an example I have taken here, this is a BLISK. BLISK is nothing but a bladed rotor disc. This rotor, if we see, this rotor material is made of some SS, and all the blades were made of Inconel 718. It is mainly used in the turbines. Okay. In olden days, if any one of this blade got worn out or any one of this blade was broken, there is no option except replacing the entire component. It is not economical also. And with the welding, if we repair the component, whatever is worn out or whatever is broken, if with the welding, if we do, welding imposes huge heat input into that, and the huge heat input will change the whatever base material mechanical properties or microstructural aspects. But here, when the direct energy deposition or laser based technology is introduced, that laser spot diameter is very less. Because of that, the heat affected zone is also very less. The substrate mechanical properties or metallurgical aspects were unaltered, and you can deposit the material rather than completely replacing the entire setup. That is the huge advantage with the direct energy deposition or this metal additive manufacturing technologies. As we see, a small introduction about the direct energy deposition. It is one of the additive manufacturing processes used to fabricate 3D components by melting and depositing the blown metal powders in layered manner with help of focused laser heat source. We are using laser-based direct energy deposition in our work. Some other people have also worked with electron beam, but in our case, we are using laser-based direct energy deposition. The quality of deposition, it is strongly dependent on the process parameters we have used during the deposition. For that reason, one should have a proper knowledge on the process parameters. Then only they can get the quality deposition. What are the process parameters we can vary, and what is the effect of the process parameters variation on the output? Then only we can master the technology. And since many people are working in this area, many researchers some has named it as laser metal deposition, some has named it as direct metal deposition, some has named it as laser cladding, some has named it as laser energy deposition, some has named it as laser engineering nut shaping. Whatever may be the name called, the sole technology behind it is the same. It is a direct energy deposition process. And shortly we will see the schematic of how this direct energy deposition technology works. Let us see in the figure 1, if we see the schematic of direct energy deposition technique, there is a laser beam from the laser gun, it is coming. That laser beam is directed onto the substrate. In that substrate, this laser beam melts a small portion of the substrate and generates a small melt pool. So a small portion of the substrate is melted and it is in the molten state. Into that melt pool, the metal powders were fed coaxially along with the laser beam. So the whatever metal powders we have supplied will enter into the melt pool and gets deposited as a new layer. As the laser is moving in this green line direction, as the laser moves continuously, this process continues and a new layer will form on the substrate. That is the deposition. And if we see this video, that is the laser and powder particles are coming and the new layer is depositing on that. Now in our work, we have considered three main process parameters. One is laser power, other one is scanning speed, with what speed the laser is moving in that direction, and the other one is the powder feed rate. What is the amount of powder we are supplying for minute? How many grams of powder we are supplying for the minute? The output we have considered is what is the deposition geometry and what is the microstructure we are getting. By varying the process parameters systematically, we have studied how the clad geometry is varying, clad or deposition geometry is varying, or microstructure is varying. We will enter into our topic. The very first one, effect of process parameters on the deposition geometry. We have divided this work into three parts. One is effect of process parameters on the deposition geometry. Second one is effect of process parameters on the microstructure. And third one is microstructure and mechanical properties relation or correlation. Based on the microstructure, how the mechanical properties are varying. As of now, we will discuss the first part, effect of process parameters on the deposition geometry. See here, the end application needed always needed a perfect shape. Whatever shape they require, that is the only thing they mind. Here he is asking that I want a perfect cube, but the machine operator is saying he has given the process parameters according to the given standards, but the end component is deviating from the original shape. Why this is happening? The machine operator is saying I know this much only and I cannot do anything further. In this situation, like engineers or researchers like us have to enter and we have to study why this is happening. For this problem, we have took up this problem and we have studied the effect of process parameters on the geometry. Why there is a deviation than the expected and the original one. Further, we have deposited 27 single tracks of Inconel 718 on SS316 substrates at 27 different process conditions. Further, we have used a LDF fiber coupled diode laser with a maximum output of 4 kilowatt, and the laser energy distribution is the Gaussian shape and with a spot diameter of 5.5 mm. Argon we have used for the powder carrying and at the same time shielding gas. The laser gun was fitted with a coaxial nozzle which supplies the powder by using a Unicode gravimetric powder feeder. The complete setup we have fixed on a 6 degrees of freedom KUKA robotic arm to move the robot as we required for the deposition. Now, once the setup is ready, we have chosen the process parameters. We have chosen three process parameters we have earlier have seen: laser power, scanning speed, and powder feed rate. And we have varied those process parameters each at three levels, 3 into 3, 3 power 3, 27 different process parameters that we got. We have used design of experiments. Why? Because random variation won't give any proper results for us. Design of experiments is the proper way to study any system or to understand any system in a scientific manner. That's why we have relied on design of experiments matrix and we have deposited 27 3 factorial 3 level design matrix. And these are the process parameters we have varied. Laser power we have varied from 2600 watt to 3400 watt. Scanning speed we have varied from 12 mm per second to 18 mm per second, and powder feed rate 35 gram per minute to 45 gram per minute. The output clad geometry we have considered here in our work is clad width W, clad height H, penetration depth B, and theta is the wetting angle. You may raise a doubt that, sir, you have 4 kilowatt laser and you can choose a process parameters 1 kilowatt, 2 kilowatt, and 3 kilowatt. That is also possible. And scanning speed you can use 10, 15, and 20. That is also possible. What is the standard for choosing this process parameters range, particular this range? Why you have chosen this particular range? In research, nothing is random. There should be a solid evidence, your solid background. If you want to do something, there should be a solid background for it. Further, the process parameters range we have chosen based on the early literature that suggests that if you see here, melting and surface remelting, alloying and cladding, that happens in this range only. This range means laser intensity, that should be 10 power 4 to 10 power 5 watt per centimeter square. Laser intensity is nothing but the laser power divided by the spot diameter area. That is the laser intensity. Either way, there is another option, laser fluence, that is 10 power 4 joule per centimeter square. Then only the cladding will happen. That is laser energy density. It is volume. Either way, we can call volumetric energy density, that is laser power divided by scanning speed into spot diameter. So we have chosen that should be 10 power 4 joule per centimeter square. Whatever parameters range we have chosen that falls in this range, then only we have carry forward with the experiments. The interaction time is also 10 power minus 2 seconds. Then only the cladding will happen. Otherwise, there may be chances of, if the input energy is more, the laser intensity, whatever you are using, 10 power 8, 10 power 9, there may be drilling may happen, machining may happen, and it may evaporate also. If you go for 10 power 3 laser intensity, 10 power 3 watt per centimeter square, only heating will happen. No deposition will occur. Further, there should be, whatever you do in research, there should be a solid work or solid background for the choosing of the parameters range. Based on this chart, we have chosen the process parameters, and we have varied the process parameters in systematic manner to understand the effect of process parameters on the geometry. And once the cladding, direct energy deposition setup is ready, second thing is that our process parameters are ready. Third thing, the powder. Powder we have procured from Indo-MIM Private Limited. This company is situated in Bangalore, and we have ordered Inconel 718 powder, and they have supplied. They told that, sir, this is sure. We have done testing from our side, and it is Inconel 718, and particle size is ranging from 60 microns to 100 microns. And this is Inconel. They have given their own composition. Can we believe and carry on the experimentation? No. As a researcher, it's our primary duty to check the powder composition. Why? Because from our side, we need a confirmation. This is Inconel 718 only, and the particle size was in the given range, and it is spherical in nature. For that purpose, we have observed the powder morphology in SEM, and these two images are the SEM images of the powder what we have procured from Indo-MIM, and that shows the spherical nature of the powder particles. And on the SEM images, with the help of ImageJ software, we have measured the diameter of each particle. Almost 200 measurements we have done on the SEM image, and we have developed a histogram for the diameter size, and which shows majority of the particles are falling in the range 60 microns to 100 microns diameter, and there are small deviation, very few particles are there. And for the confirmation of the phase, we have done the XRD analysis on that, and we have confirmed the phase, it is Inconel 718 only. And they have given composition, but to confirm the composition from our side, elemental composition and their weight percentage, we have performed the XRF analysis. It is a quantitative elemental analysis. It gives the what amount of elements, mean weight percent of the elements that exist in the particular given material. This is the XRF analysis we have performed, and we have got this weight percentage. This is almost similar to, this is a Inconel 718 composition. And we have performed EDS analysis also. EDS analysis cannot give quantitative results, but it do qualitative results. This EDS will show you that what are the elements that exist in the particular material, but it cannot give you amount of material that exists, but it can show you the different materials that exist in the powder. We have performed all these analyses for as an initial characterization for Inconel 718, and we have confirmed it is Inconel 718. Then only we have proceeded for the next deposition on the SS316 plates. The left side image that shows that is sample image of 12th sample, that is Inconel 718 single rack we have deposited on SS316 substrate. After deposition, we have cut the samples at two locations. As we are doing statistical analysis, it is always suggested that take 2 or 3, minimum to minimum 3 to 4 readings, make it average, then only that statistical analysis will have some meaning. Rather than it's why? Because it's a single track deposition, and it is always better to take 3-4 readings and make an average of it. That is the proper way to do the statistical analysis. And after that, we have observed the clad geometry. We have seen at the bottom transverse section of the clad, and that we have observed in optical microscope. And this image on the right side shows the total 27 images and 27 clad geometries observed under optical microscope. Here we have observed S22 and S25 samples because of the less energy, because of the amount of energy what we have supplied is not sufficient enough. That's why no continuous track was produced on the S25 and S22. Remaining samples were have produced a continuous tracks, and we have cut the samples and we observed the clad geometry features in optical microscope. On each and every on each and every cross section, we have measured clad height, clad width, penetration depth, and wetting angle for the given process parameters, and we have tabulated those values here in the table. Based on the results, we have performed regression analysis, linear regression analysis, to form the models, to form the statistical and empirical models. So as and when required, if I want some particular height, clad height, according to that I have to set the process parameters. This H shows the height of the clad, and that is the model for it. 1.47 minus 0.1 p is the laser power, and v is the scanning speed, and f is the powder feed rate, and vf is the interaction effect of v and f. And likewise, w is for the clad width and theta is for the wetting angle. Like that, we have developed three statistical models for the clad geometry features in terms of the input process parameters. Whenever required, if we give this much, if we already set the process conditions, we can predict the clad height. Otherwise, if we want some particular clad height, we can use the model and we can adjust the process parameters to get the required clad height. Now, if we see the results, the maximum clad width we got on sample S3, and the minimum clad width we got on sample S19. The reason for this is the process parameter set we have used in the both cases. In sample S3, we have used maximum power, that means high power, and slow scanning speed, mean the very low scanning speed we have used. Low scanning speed means the laser moves very slowly. That means the laser is concentrated on the same point for the prolonged duration. If it is moving fast, the interaction time is very less. If it is moving slow, the laser is interacting with the substrate for the prolonged period. And the powder feed rate is also in S3 is very less, 35 gram per minute. The least we have chosen for our study. In this case, whatever laser power and scanning speed, that gives the energy, what the amount of energy we are supplying to the substrate. The amount of energy we are supplying to the substrate will be utilized to melt a small portion on the substrate, and the other half is utilized to melt the powder whatever we are supplying. So the amount of energy is shared by the off by the powder, off by the substrate. So here, if we see the maximum power we are utilizing, so the amount of energy that is utilizing to melt the substrate is large amount of energy, and that too we are giving very less powder. So a fraction of energy is sufficient to melt the powder. So the remaining all energy utilized to melt the substrate, and very wide and deep melt pools will form. When the wide and deep melt pools are formed, a clad width obviously increases. On the other hand, on the counterpart, if we see in the S19 sample, we are using 2.6 kilowatt. The power is very less, and the powder feed rate we are using is 45 gram per minute. It's a huge amount of powder. Already the amount of laser power we are supplying less. In that less amount of energy, some portion or majority of the portion is taken care by the powder we have supplied. So there is very less amount of energy available for the substrate to melt and form a melt pool. That's why very small melt pools are formed on the substrate, and the clad width was observed to be very less, and the minimum 4.5 mm. That is the effect of process parameters on the clad width. And afterwards, we have done the analysis of variance on the results what we got from our table, clad geometry features table, and we have seen that all individual parameters are contributing to the clad width. P, laser power is contributing, V is contributing, scanning speed, powder feed rate, F is also contributing. The significance, those all three are significant. And surprisingly, the interaction term P into F is also contributing to the clad width. It is also, its effect is also significant in the clad width. And the coefficient of determination, we have developed a model for the clad width, and the coefficient of determination is almost 87% we got. And this is the model. This graph shows the measured clad width versus the predicted clad width values. That is the green dots show the measured clad width values, and the red line shows the predicted values. And the histogram shows the error in prediction. That error in prediction, if we see, that is varying from plus or minus 5%. And strictly speaking, majority of the error in prediction is -2 to +2 only. And this is the model for the statistical model for the clad width. And whatever we have observed, that falls in the trend. And the right side graph, if we see, that is the normalized surface enthalpy versus the clad width. And normalized surface enthalpy is a physical term, that is the enthalpy at the surface, available at the surface. It is based on the laser power P and scanning speed V. P divided by square root of V. That eta is the absorption coefficient, laser absorption coefficient of the material. Rho signifies the density, and Hs signifies the enthalpy at the melting. Alpha signifies the thermal diffusivity, and sigma signifies the spot diameter. As this equation includes material properties also, spot diameter also, and our process parameters P and scanning speed. That's why we have studied how this is varying. With the increase in normalized surface enthalpy, the clad width increasing linearly. When the powder feed rate we kept constant, black shows the 35 gram per minute and red dot shows the 40 gram per minute. And with the linear variation we have observed here with the normalized enthalpy, this can be justified that the amount of energy input or amount of enthalpy or the amount of energy we have supplied is more, the clad width increases more. Because of that, with the increasing normalized enthalpy, the clad width is also increasing. Now we will see the results for clad height. The maximum clad height we got on S19 and the minimum clad height we got on S9. This is why this is happening. We have started investigating why this is happening. If we see on S19, the amount of powder, the amount of the laser power we are supplying is very low, and the scanning speed is very low scanning speed, and powder we have supplied is more. So whatever amount of energy we are supplying, 2.46 kilowatt, majority of the energy is utilized to deposit and melt the powder we have supplied. That's why at the prolonged interaction, more powder got deposited and we got more height. On the other hand, on sample S9, the amount of power we are supplying is 3.4 kilowatt. It's a huge power. It smelts the substrate huge. And at the same time, the amount of powder we are supplied is 35 gram per minute only, very less powder. So a fraction of the energy supplied is sufficient to melt and deposit 35 gram per minute. And majority of the power utilized to melt the substrate and form a deep melt pool. Because of that reason, the height formed is very less, and whatever powder we are supplied, that will diffuse or enter into the melt pool and gets alloyed with the substrate. That's why the height we got is very less. Again, we have performed analysis of variance to find what are the parameters that are significant on the clad height. Again, we found that laser power, scanning speed, and powder feed rate, all three are significant on the clad height. And the interaction term, that is scanning speed and powder feed rate, those are very significant on the interaction term. Powder feed rate and scanning speed is significant on the clad height. This based on this analysis of variance and regression analysis, we have developed a model for clad height that is given here, statistical and empirical model. The graph on the left side shows that the red line shows the predicted values and the green dot shows the our measured values. So it is showing 95% fitting, and the error in the estimation is plus or minus 5% only. So with this model, if we estimate the clad height, so our estimation is within the range of plus or minus 5% deviation only. And before in the analysis of variance, we have seen the interaction term V and F means scanning speed and powder feed rate is significant. Based on the scanning speed and powder feed rate, we have a term line mass. That line mass is nothing but the amount of powder we have supplied for the unit length. That is powder feed rate by scanning speed. This is F by V, which shows that with the increasing in the amount of powder supplied for unit length, the clad height is also increasing. And other term we can observe here that black dot shows the 2.6 kilowatt and red shows 3.4 kilowatt and blue, the red shows 3 kilowatt and blue shows the triangle shows the 3.4 kilowatt. And here also we can observe with the increasing in the power mean at less power we got more clad height. At red, it is a moderate power, we got moderate clad height. Blue triangle, it is a high power, we got less clad height. That is also evident. And with the increasing line mass, the clad height is also increasing. That is also evident from the results. And if we see the wetting angle results, we have developed a model for wetting angle. And the wetting angle we have observed, it is in the similar lines of clad height. As the height increases, the angle increases. As the height decreases, the angle decreases. For the wetting angle also we have developed a model, and the error in prediction is plus or minus 4 or plus or minus 2 to 3%. And wetting angle is also varying linearly with the line mass, that is the amount of powder supplied for unit length. Based on the we have performed the analysis of variance on wetting angle also, and we have seen here only individual parameters P power, V scanning speed, and F are the significant parameters on the wetting angle. Other all three interaction terms are not so significant and they have very less impact on the wetting angle. If we see the overall observations based on our statistical analysis on the geometry, that is the effect of process parameters on the geometry, with the increasing laser power, clad height is decreasing, clad width is increasing, and wetting angle is also decreasing. Here, we can justify that with the increasing power, the amount of energy transferred to the substrate is increases. So large melt pools will form, so more width will form. And in the large melt pools, whatever powder we have supplied, that will get deposited and that will get alloyed in the melt pool rather than depositing. That's why the height and wetting angle are less and clad width is more. For the scanning speed, if we increase the scanning speed, all three parameter, all three geometry features are reducing. Clad height is reducing, clad width is reducing, and wetting angle is also reducing. This is because if we increase the scan speed, the interaction between the laser and substrate reduces. The laser moves very quick, and if we increase the scan speed, so the amount of energy transferred is also very less. Mean, if the laser is moving quick, the amount of energy transferred to the substrate is less. Because of that, rather than deposition or rather than alloying, small deposition will occur, but height, width, and wetting angle all reduces. And powder feed rate, with the increasing powder feed rate, clad height and wetting angle are increasing, clad width is reducing. This is we have seen. Why? Because powder feed rate by scanning speed is the line mass. With the increasing powder feed rate or with the increasing line mass, the clad height and wetting angle are increasing. As the powder feed rate increases, line mass increases. Because of that, height and wetting angle are increasing. As the powder feed rate increases, clad width is decreasing. This is because if we keep on increasing the powder supplied, that the amount of powder we have supplied, that takes majority of the supplied energy from the laser and to get melt and deposited rather than melting the substrate and forming the melt pool. That's why the amount of powder increases, the substrate melts less and powder deposits more. That's why clad width is reducing. Apart from these individual observations, we have seen a normalized enthalpy is directly, clad width is directly proportional to the normalized enthalpy, that is P by root V into some constant, and clad height, wetting angle are directly proportional to the line mass, that is powder feed rate by scanning speed. This is about the statistical analysis or effect of process parameters on the geometry. So in order to get a perfect geometry, we need to do some statistical analysis, or else we need to follow some empirical models to get the required geometry as and when required. Now again, these two people started quarreling. The end application wants equiaxial structure, and the mission operator says that I will give you columnar structure. Now we will start our analysis on the microstructure. If I change the process parameters, how the microstructure evolution will be, how the microstructure formation will be. So here if we see, the end application require equiax and mission operator saying that I can give you only columnar structure. We may get it out there. Anyhow, shape is fixed. I mean, geometry is whatever required geometry we got. So what about the microstructure? Why to more constant? Why too much? Why to give much importance to the microstructure or grain orientation? Here, if we see in the columnar structure, if we apply load in the perpendicular direction to the columnar grains, it may fail actually. If it is equiaxial structure in any direction, all four directions, whatever directions you apply, that is strong in all directions. But if the structure is columnar like this, if we apply load like this, it may break. That's why preferably equiaxial structure are required. Further, we have studied the microstructure evolution in the direct energy deposited in Inconel 718 components. For the microstructure analysis, out of 27, we have taken 9 samples, that is S1 to S9. We have kept the powder feed rate constant as 35 gram per minute, and we have varied only laser power and scanning speed. Laser power we have varied from 2.6 kilowatt to 3.4 kilowatt, and scanning speed from 12 to 18 mm per second. Once we observe, once we started our observations on the microstructure, we have observed in the SS316 substrate, those we can see equiaxial structure, but whereas in the Inconel 718 deposition, that grain growth is happening epitaxial to the substrate. Here in the same image also we can see the grains are growing epitaxially or in the perpendicular direction to the substrate. Here also in the optical image also we can see the grain growth is occurring. Then we started thinking why this is happening, what might be the reason for this, why the grain growth is happening in the perpendicular direction to the substrate, why it is not like the SS316 equiaxial structure. Then we have come up with a theory that we can see here the clad and melt pool during the deposition. The clad and melt pool, just before this picture is just before the solidification. The clad and melt pool are at very high temperature immediately when the laser moves away from that point. And at the same time, the substrate bottom is at very low temperature. As it's a general, as we all know, and from childhood onwards, we know that heat transfers from high temperature region to low temperature region. So the high heat regions that such as clad and melt pool, the heat dissipates towards the substrate bottom. That is the case. So, and apart from this observation, grain growth during the solidification, grain growth occurs always in the direction opposite to the heat transfer. Here, the heat transfer is happening in the downward direction. The grain growth is occurring in the opposite direction to the heat transfer. That's why we are getting the columnar structure. This is the phenomena that is giving us the columnar structure. For that, we have taken S9 sample here and we have observed, and this is the substrate and this is the clad, and we have divided the total clad region into 3 regions. Top region, T represents top region, M represents middle region, and B represents the bottom region. So we have analyzed a theory that is valid in the bottom and middle regions. Why? Because we have got columnar structure in the bottom region and middle region also we got columnar structure. And our observations are deviating from our analysis, where in the top region the equiaxial structure is we have observed equiaxial structure. Then again we started working why this is happening, why equiaxial structure is occurring only at the top, why not at the middle and bottom regions. For that, we have started our analysis, and we have from the literature and from our understanding we have seen G by R, thermal gradient and solidification rate. These two are very important terms. Thermal gradient is G and R is the solidification rate. When G by R ratio is high, it is favorable for the columnar structure, and when G by R ratio is low, it promotes the equiaxial formation. If we observe the previous image one, at the middle and bottom temperatures, at the middle and bottom, the temperatures are high, and at the substrate bottom, the temperature is low. Because of that, The middle and bottom regions are not exposed to the atmosphere. They have no other choice except transferring that heat, whatever they are having, to the substrate. So the mode of heat transfer is conduction. The mode of heat transfer is conduction in middle and bottom regions, that is predominant in middle and bottom regions. On the other hand, at the top region is exposed to the atmosphere, and it can transfer or it can dissipate the heat through radiation heat transfer. If we see here, at the bottom and middle regions, temperature is so high and the substrate bottom temperature is so less. So the thermal gradient is so huge, mean the G value is very high. And at the same time, the mode of heat transfer is conduction, the solidification rate is very less. So at the bottom and middle regions, the G value is high and R value is less, which gives high ratio of G by R, which gives the columnar structure. That's why we got columnar structure here in the middle and the bottom regions. On the other hand, if we see at the top region can dissipate heat to the atmosphere, and at the same time, top region is at high temperature and bottom and middle regions are also at high temperature. So there is very less temperature difference between them. The thermal gradient is very less. And at the same time, because of the radiation, the heat transfer is very quick. Why? Because the temperatures at the top, we have observed almost 1800 degrees centigrade. So 1800 degrees are normally the room temperature is at 25 degrees centigrade or max to max 30 degrees centigrade. So with this huge difference in temperature, the radiation is very quick and the solidification rate is very high. So high use R value and less G value results in low G by R ratio, which gives equiaxial structure in the top region. That is the reason we got middle and bottom portions we have observed columnar, and at the top region we have observed equiaxial structure. And to confirm this scenario whether it is right or wrong, we have deposited three multi-layer samples, that is 2-layer, 3-layer and 4-layer samples, and all the samples we have cut and observed in SEM. We have found the same scenario, and A and B represents the middle and bottom regions, and C represents the top region, where in the middle and bottom regions give columnar, and at the top region give the equiaxial structure. We have observed the scenario is fine. This is about the microstructure evolution. Now we want to study, if I vary the laser power, what is happening to the microstructure? If I vary the scanning speed, what is happening to the microstructure? Is there any change in the microstructure? For that, we have all 9 samples we have observed under SEM, and we have measured the dendrite arm spacing in all the 9 samples. And grain length also we have measured, and grain width also we have measured. We have tabulated those results. Based on the dendrite arm spacing, we can calculate the cooling rate. It is a semi-empirical relation widely used. It is lambda naught equal to 80 into epsilon power minus 0.33. Here epsilon is the cooling rate and lambda naught is the dendrite arm spacing in microns. Anyhow, we know lambda naught dendrite arm spacing, we have calculated the cooling rate, and for all 9 samples we have calculated the cooling rate, and the cooling rates are ranging between 10 power 2 Kelvin per second to 10 power 3 Kelvin per second. It is very good accordance with it is our results are well matching with the literature results also. We are in our research is in a good direction that supported our research. And if we see based on the cooling rates, we have plotted graphs for the process parameters variation and the cooling rate variation. If we observe, with the increasing laser power, the cooling rate increasing, and with the increasing scanning speed, the cooling rate is also increasing. These black squares are at 12 mm per second, and red dots are at 15 mm per second, and blue triangles are at 18 mm per second. We have individually has plotted the graphs. And the same for the cooling rate also we have, the scanning speed also we have observed. The effect we have observed is, with the increasing laser power, the cooling rate increasing, and with the increasing scanning speed, the cooling rate is also increasing. That we can observe from the contour plot. So that red line, that red color represents the high cooling rate, and the blue color represents the low cooling rate. So at 3.4 kilowatt, the high cooling rate we are getting, and at 2.6 kilowatt, very low cooling rate we are getting. As like at 12 mm per second, we are getting very less cooling rate, and at 18 mm per second, we are getting high cooling rate. We have started digging why this is happening. If I increase laser power, why the cooling rate is increasing? If I increase scanning speed, why the cooling rate is increasing? Then we understood that if I increase the laser power, the amount of energy transferred to the substrate or the multiple temperature rises. The amount of energy transferred is increases and the multiple temperature also rises. When the multiple temperature rises, the temperature difference between the multiple and the substrate increases. That means delta T between the delta T, that is the temperature difference between the melt pool and the substrate bottom, increases. As we know, at the bottom and middle regions, conduction heat transfer is predominant. Conduction equation is Ka delta T. When the delta T increases, conduction increases. Faster heat dissipation occurs. Because of that, the cooling rate is increasing. And on the other hand, if we start investigating the scanning speed, we have observed that with the increasing scanning speed, the interaction time is reducing. The interaction time between the laser and substrate is reducing. That means the amount of energy transferring is reducing. At the same time, heat accumulation is reducing. If the laser is concentrated on the same spot for longer time, amount of heat accumulated over the same spot increases. Instead of that, we are increasing the scanning speed. That means laser is moving away from the spot, no heat accumulation. Whatever temperature rise that is getting dissipated immediately as quick as possible once the laser moved away from the spot. Because of that reason, with the increasing scanning speed, the cooling rate is also increasing. Now we have seen in the table we have calculated cooling rates. Now we will see about the grain length and grain width. If we see, molten metal is there, higher cooling rate, and lower cooling rate. We will see the case of higher cooling rate. At the higher cooling rate, the grains will be exposed for the high temperature for a very less time. Why? Because the heat dissipates very quick and it doesn't have much time for the grain growth. That's why we get a fine grains. On the other hand, lower cooling rates, the molten metal, it is exposed for the high temperature for prolonged duration of time. Meanwhile, the grains will be exposed for the high temperature for prolonged time, and the grain growth will occur and coarse grain structure we will get. This is the basic principle for the cooling rate and its related microstructure and the grain size. We have observed the same here in our this is the graph we have plotted for 1 by square root of cooling rate to the grain length and 1 by square root of cooling rate to the grain width. When the cooling rate is high, the x value is very less. When the cooling rate is low, the x value is very high. We have observed here at the high cooling rate, the grain length is very less. At the low cooling rate, the grain length is very high. In the same way, the grain width is also at the high cooling rate, the grain width is less, and the high cooling rate, the grain width is less, and at the low cooling rate, the grain width is more. And apart from that observations, generalized observations, we have seen a linear relation between the 1 by square root of cooling rate to the grain length. With the increasing 1 by square root of cooling length, the grain length is increasing linearly. At the same time, the grain width is also varying linearly with the 1 by square root of the cooling rate. Now, again, these two people started quarreling. This person is saying that mission operator, yes, now I will use the statistical models and I will deliver you the geometry, whatever you want. That is fine. And now I will set the process parameters so that we will get maximum cooling rate, so that we will get fine grain structure. Now the end application is seeking. Okay, those two tasks were on part 3. That is the, let us check for the mechanical properties. Microstructure is fine, we have set the process parameters, and geometry is fine, we have set the process parameters. Now we will take up the task that mechanical properties of the direct energy deposited components. As an initial analysis, we have done micro hardness with the Vickers indentation. We have measured micro hardness values on the S1 to S9 sample. We have observed minimum hardness is of 265 or 266 HV and the maximum hardness of 281 HV. There is no much variation with the variation in the process parameters. The range of variation is very less. It is almost 15 HV variation. So we said that So there is minimal variation with the process parameters in the mechanical properties. But there is one important thing we need to observe here. The hardness value of the, Vickers indentation hardness value of the aged and hardened Inconel 718 alloy is 420 HV. But here, the maximum hardness we got 281 hardness. That's it. Then again, we started our investigation. Why this is happening? Geometry is fine and microstructure is fine. And why the mechanical properties are reducing? Why this is happening? Why this peculiar thing is happening in the direct energy deposited components? And we have observed the same in the multi-layer cladding also. The maximum hardness we have observed is a 263, and apart from the less hardness value we have observed, with the increasing in the number of deposited layers, the hardness value is reducing further and further. This we have justified with the each and every time we are depositing a layer. When we are depositing the second layer, the first layer is getting melted again and deposited, and when we are depositing the third layer, a small portion of second layer is melted again and deposited and solidified, and when we are depositing a fourth layer, the same thing is happening to the third layer. Like that, when the repeated heating and repeated cooling, that might have caused the reduction in the hardness with the number of layers. Now we have seen, apart from this analysis, we are more worried about why the hardness value is very less. It should be 420 HV, but what we are getting is 280 HV. This much huge gap. Why this is happening to our samples? We were worried very much, and we started our investigation. And we started our investigation on the microstructure analysis. We have taken SEM images of the Inconel 718, and we have seen there is a micro heterogeneity in the elemental distribution in the Inconel 718. Generally, in the Inconel 718 composition, niobium percent is 5%. On an average, it is 5%. But here, if we see in the dendrite, we have done EDS analysis. In the dendritic region, it is 1.6% only. On the other hand, at the interdendritic region, we have seen 13% NB. So the NB here in the dendrites is depleting. That is all getting segregated to the interdendritic regions. Why this is happening? Then we started studying the solidification process of Inconel 718, how this happens generally. Generally, the solidification process of Inconel 718 starts with the primary nucleation of the gamma dendrites in the molten metal. These gamma dendrites starts a nucleation as a nucleation sites in the molten metal, and these starts to grow. In the second step, these gamma dendrites, these nucleus sites grow large and longer. At the same time, niobium has a tendency of it is segregation. That means that at the niobium, whatever present in the gamma dendrite, that will move towards the liquid solid boundary. To be frank, if we are saying that will enter into the molten metal. Like that, gamma dendrites eject the niobium into the liquid metal. So now we have two things in the molten metal. One is gamma dendrite, other one is the NB rich liquid metal. In the third step, further these dendrites grow longer and longer. Further, whatever NB they have, that will eject into the liquid metal. In the third step, the gamma dendrites will be larger, and the molten metal is the richer in the NB. In the final stage, whatever NB that was ejected into the liquid metal, that will forms as a Laves phase and the gamma dendrites. These gamma dendrites are depleted of NB, and the interdendritic region that is forms the Laves phase that is rich in niobium. We have seen that on the white spots, or earlier we have seen at the interdendritic region, we have seen these white spots. One of the white spot we have taken, and we have done the analysis. The niobium concentration is almost 35% in the weight. This niobium concentration, these white phases are very brittle in nature, and these are because of this region, the mechanical, this has very determinantal effect on the mechanical properties. That's why we are getting very less hardness values. And at the same time, we have done the elemental mapping to identify the distribution of NB in the matrix. If we see here, the green color shows the NB distribution, blue color shows the chromium, and violet shows the nickel, and violet shows the iron, and light blue shows the nickel. If we see here, chromium, iron, and nickel are homogeneously distributed in the matrix, whereas the only niobium is segregated in the long chains because of the tendency of segregation. It is inevitable in inconel 718. Generally, inconel 718 is a precipitation strength alloy, and this precipitates forms based on the aging or the heat treatment effect. These precipitates shows these precipitates are intermetallic precipitates. Those are gamma prime and gamma double prime. Gamma prime is Ni3Alrti, or gamma double prime is Ni3Nb. These precipitates are incoherent with the ingonal 718 matrix, and these precipitates restricts the plastic flow of the material. When someone is try to apply indent on the material, or else when someone is trying to pull the material of inconel 718, these intermetallic precipitates acts as a restriction sites, and these won't allow the material to break, or else they allow the material to deform. That's why, because of these intermetallic precipitates, the inconel 718 is so hard, and it gets its strength and hardness. But whereas in our case, the direct energy deposition, that whatever Nb should be required to form the gamma double prime precipitates, it is segregated into the Leaves phase. The lack of Nb that results in the absence of the intermetallic precipitates in the microstructure of the present direct energy deposited components. Because of the lack of these gamma double prime precipitates, our components are showing very less hardness values. To counter this problem, we have done the heat treatment analysis or heat treatment process. It's a complete of 18 hours cycle, and we have later again we have tested our samples. We have achieved almost 400 HV and 410 HV. We have achieved after heat treatment, but this work is still under review. That's why I'm not disclosing the results here, the heat treatment and all. So we could able to retain the strength of the inconel 718, and we could able to get the Nv3 and V precipitates in the inconel 718 matrix after the post heat treatment. This is the work up till this moment we have done, and further we have deposited these samples, and this work is running right now. We are doing it right now, and this is in the middle. Actually, we didn't do any much analysis on this, and we have deposited 4 inconel 718 cubes, each of size 100 mm length and 15 mm height, and 15 mm width and 10 mm. For this, each of 12 tracks and 10 layers we have deposited. From these cubes, we have cut the tensile specimens according to the ASTM E8 standards, and we have shown the samples here. Like this, in this direction, we have cut the tensile specimens, and we have shown here. Our further analysis we are thinking to do, that is, one is the residual stresses analysis. As this direct energy deposition involve repeated heating and repeated cooling, because of that, the residual stresses will obviously generate in the material. Sometimes these residual stresses may overcome the yield strength also. In such cases, one should have a prior knowledge on the residual stresses. Otherwise, if already residual stresses are there in the component, it may lead to some catastrophe. All of a sudden, if you apply some load, it will lead to a catastrophe. For that reason, we want to study. Our next research goal is to find the residual stresses in the deposited components. That is, we are planning to do that in XRD method, and in other one is a Suresh method, that is instrumented indentation, sharp indentation method. This work is under progress, and we are expecting to finish it in the coming 1 or 2 months. And apart from that, we want, as we have discussed earlier, the segregation in inconel 718 is inevitable. So Nb, we cannot arrest the Nb segregation in inconel 718 during the solidification. For that, we have two options of post processing, and apart from the segregation, we have microstructural heterogeneity also. We are having either columnar structure in some places and equiaxial structure in some places, like that. So in order to counter these two problems, we need to go for post processing of the inconel 718 components, and that is 2 ways we have: either heat treatment and laser remelting, that is a surface melting. Heat treatment we have already performed and we have achieved proper results, and the results are also encouraging. And we are trying to do the laser remelting. Like that, we have tensile samples. We have cut 9 tensile samples like this, and out of those 9 tensile samples, 3 we will test in as deposited condition, and 3 we will subject to heat treatment, and we the 3 laser remelting we have to do in the next month. So once the test is over, we will compare all the 3 results, and we will see the best method which is possible for the post heat treatment. Why? Because this heat treatment is already well established, but if the component size is very big enough, we cannot bring the component and put it in the furnace, and our heat treatment cycle involves 18 hours of heat treatment cycle. It is not economical also to do the heat treatment. So for that, we are exploring the ways of laser remelting, so that immediate after building the component, again if we run the laser, or again if we remelt the surface once again, if we could able to get some good proper results, then it is very economical also. That's why we are exploring the laser remelting area, and hopefully we will finish the task in coming 2-3 months. And coming to the conclusions, we have studied the clad geometry behavior and correlated with the input process parameters, so that we have developed a models accordingly. Based on the required clad geometry, we can set the process parameters, or else based on the given process parameters, we can predict the clad geometry also. Microstructure analysis is carried on single layers and multi-layers, and we have observed columnar structure at the bottom and middle regions and equiaxial structure in the top region. And we have found that cooling rate is the one important factor that gives the either equiax or the columnar structure. Cooling rates are also we have calculated based on the dendrite arm spacing values, and the values are in the range of 10 power 2 to 10 power 3 Kelvin per second. And this cooling rate is observed to be increasing with the laser power and scanning speed. With the increase of laser power is also cooling rate increasing. With the scanning speed also cooling rate is increasing. Grain morphology is also observed, that is length and width, and it is found to be a function of cooling rate. And we have performed EDS analysis, and we have observed severe elemental segregation at the interdendritic regions. And micro hardness values also we have observed, and it has shown very minimal variation with the process parameters. And there is a linear relationship between the grain size and the micro hardness values. These are my conclusions, and these are the 2 publications I got. And one is microstructure evaluation and the direct energy deposition of multi-layer Inconel 718. It is published in Arabian Journal for Science and Engineering, Springer publication studies. And other one is recently we got this parametric effect on the microstructure of direct metal deposited in Inconel 718. This is materials and manufacturing process, and this publisher is Tyler and Francis. And the third paper, that is a statistical analysis on the clad geometry in direct energy deposited in Inconel 718 single tracks. This is a Journal of Materials Engineering and Performance. They have recommended this work for publication, but they have informed us very minor modifications. Similar to images quality, they have problem with the image quality, and now once we do it, and it will be accepted. And these are the publications. And this work is financially supported by the DST, Department of Science and Technology, under the project Technology Direct Transfer, under the scheme of additive manufacturing technology. This is the project number. And I thank my supervisor for the valuable guidance in this work. And I express my thanks to the research group I am working with, Nikhil Thavri, Prayag Borad, and Rahul Mali. And when we have a believe me, when we have a very good research work, it is not like a research, it is just like you can enjoy the every moment, and you can feel the liveliness in the research with a good group. That is the advantage in the research group. And I'm very glad that I got a very good research group, and I'm very happy for it. Thank you. Now, floor is open for questions. Anyone can, if you have any participants has doubts, they can ask the questions.
Yeah, thank you, Chaitanya.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, the forum is open for any questions if you have. There is some question in the chat box. What is the relative density? 1 second. There is one Sujit Chaudhary. He is asking what is the relative density achieved for these specimens?
Yes, sir. We didn't calculate the relative density, but we have observed the porosity levels in the SCM microscope. We have observed a very minimum or negligible porosity, so that we think that density is as good as 99%. We think up to our knowledge, like why? Because we didn't see any cracks or porosity in the deposition. Sir,
Yes.
I hope, Sujit sir, I hope.
Sujit, is it okay what Chaitanya has mentioned? Sujit Chaudhary. Yeah, okay, fine. Any other query? What is the cost of laser fiber source? Oh, Deepak Chopra is asking, what is the cost of laser fiber source?
Yes, sir. Yesterday, TVK sir has told like that. Yesterday also sir told that the equipment what we are using right now, it's some 5-6 crores. It is like
Around 7 crores actually.
yes, sir. 7 crores. Sorry.
Yes. Any other questions, please? What is the percentage of dimensional accuracy? The Prathamesh Rothkar. Yeah,
Sir,
yesterday also it was asked actually. What is the
Yes,
dimensional
sir.
accuracy?
Once the statistical models are developed, based on the models, we went for the deposition, and we almost got 95%, like 96% according to the model. We got the dimension what we predicted, and the actual deposition is also behaving in that manner. So, like 95 to 96%, we are achieving that.
Okay. So what I request, if you don't have any questions, I request all the participants just to switch on your video. We'll take one snapshot. Maybe Prayag or someone else can. Okay, there is one more. For this type of additive manufacturing technique, which standard treatment is suitable? Caster or rotor? Standard heat treatment.
Sir, okay. We generally standard heat treatment for Inconel 718 that we have followed, and almost it is like a cast, sir, rather than a rod. In the cast also, if we observe on the surface, we get columnar structure. On the surface we get equiaxial structure, and the inside we will get columnar structure. And preferably, that is the cast components heat treatment is preferably suitable for this, sir.
There is one more question, Palaksha Reddy. How is the metallic foams production using additive manufacturing? Metallic foams are produced.
Sir, as of now, right now, I have no proper knowledge in that metallic forms, so it is
Metallic
beyond my
foams
topic.
we haven't tried actually.
Sir, which DOE method is used for the parameter optimization? As an initial set, we want to understand the behavior. We have done the 3 factorial analysis, but afterwards we have used response surface methodology, sir, for the second set of deposition. For the parameter optimization, we have used response surface methodology, which is rather than the simple 3 design of experiments. RSM is good. Why? Because it can assess the quadratic effects also. So preferably RSM, I prefer from my side, sir, for parameter optimization.
Is it okay, everyone? Okay. So can everyone switch on their video for a small while? For a short while, we'll take one photo. Prayag, you can try actually. Let me start my video first. Thank you. Thank you. Come. Good.
Hello, sir. Good
Yes,
evening,
sir.
sir. Hello.
Yeah. Good evening.
Sir, I have one question.
Yes.
How much thickness of cladding material we do on a base material? Maximum thickness and minimum thickness?
The minimum thickness, maximum thickness, we don't have any restriction actually. It all depends on what powder fit and how many layers you are going to deposit and how fast you are depositing it. Scan speed. So you can go up to micron level, and even in thickness, one shot you can deposit somewhere around 5 mm also thickness. It depends on the powder flow rate and the scan speed. How slowly if you are moving, you will have a better heavy deposition you are going to have it. But if you have heavy deposition, no, that the laser power may not be sufficient to melt the powder. But no, right now, what we have done, recent experiments are like high deposition rates.
Uh, okay, sir. Now recently I do research work. I would like to do cladding of SS material on MS. Then which parameter I consider?
You are going to deposit SS on MS.
Yes, sir.
No, but SS is the base material. You yourself are saying no. MS is the base material. SS is the.
Here SS is a cladding material and MS is a substrate base material.
Right. If you want to deposit stainless steel, why to go for deposition? You can go for any other process. When you are unable to make components of very hard to cut materials or difficult to cut materials, then only deposition is suggested.
Sir, by using a laser application.
No, which laser? There are many laser applications you can use. SS. There are many processes which are available now.
But sir, my question is which parameter are important?
Sir,
No,
we suggest
you
better
have, you
go for some literature study, and then it is preferable, sir. Actually, based on the literature study, you can set the parameters. Like parameter set varies from material to material.
Okay, sir, I go through literature review. Okay, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
yeah, please everyone, can you switch on your video?
What is it?
The voice is audible.
Yes, sir.
Prayag, can you take the photograph?
Yes, sir.
1 or 2, you can do it.
My query is, I just want to design a heat exchanger, and I just want to go for a polymer based heat exchanger, where I will be using the metals as a composite. And is it possible? I have gone through the literature, so various researchers have commented different things, that the performance of the heat exchanger varies. As
You can do laser cladding also. You can do laser cladding also.
So, sir, which additive manufacturing process should I prefer? Shall I go for FDM?
No, FDM is only for polymers.
Okay, sir.
You can go like SLS, selective laser sintering, even laser cladding, which we are doing right now, that is possible.
Okay. Because nowadays it is possible to design anything and to fabricate anything. But when we talk about the metal, then we have to think many parameters. The first initial
depends on the machine, depends on the power, capabilities, everything. But laser cladding has a large amount of capabilities to deposit any material.
okay, sir. Yeah.
Prayag, have you
Thank
taken
you,
the
sir.
photo?
Yes, sir. It's
Okay, thank you everyone. So thank you, Chaitanya. We'll close today's session. Tomorrow,
Thank
the
you.
session is something unique where we are going to talk about the first speaker will be talking about the art of living and meditation, because it is a part of our daily life. You are going to get stressed with continuous your today the online mode. No? In order to get your relieved whatever is the stresses, tomorrow we'll do some sort of meditation. 1.5 hours we will do. He will be giving some tips how to enhance your what you can say is that how to control your mind, everything. How can you increase your the working level? Those things will be discussed by Professor Tushar Goyal. So then we will have, after the first session, we will have the next session continued. I hope all the sessions you are enjoying and very useful for you. I wish that you will be getting something out of all these sessions. Right?
Sir, one
Yes.
point I would like to highlight here.
Yes, sir.
Now on the WhatsApp group, now a separate link has been posted, so it will be very much helpful for us to directly go into the session.
Okay. No. You want us to directly post the link on the WhatsApp group? Huh?
Yes, sir.
Definitely, we will do it actually.
Yes,
Anyway,
sir,
every day we are doing, but we will do maybe.
Yesterday I missed 2 sessions, sir, due to that. But today it works very smoothly. Today,
Okay.
all the things are aligned. Yeah.
No problem. Okay.
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Then. Thank you very much. Thank you all the participants. Have a nice day.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you please share your recording link, video
No,
lecture link?
These all videos will be hosted on the YouTube through AICT Atal portal. So from there you can download and you can view us.
And okay, sir. And, from where I download your PPT?
Not now. It is not now. Once the workshop is over, after 15 days, the links will be shared with all the participants.
Okay, through mail.
Not through mail. You will be getting a separate mail from AICT. They will be giving links and you can download from them.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, sir.
Then bye everyone. Thank you,
Thank
Priya.
you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chaitanya.
Thank you.
Sir, we have directly to end the meeting now. Record.
Once you make host, no, automatically it comes into my account. Even video, it can be recorded, but that time I don't want to stop you actually. You can stop recording.
Okay.
Yeah, no, don't stop recording. Just make me host actually.
Okay, just.
Yeah, recording is there in my login now. Don't worry. So I'll stop the recording.